Rap. Rap. Rap.
Okay. Slow start today. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged today. Worked all day outside, and then my buddy came over and we had beers in the shop on an empty tummy. A little slow. But anyway. So we didn't get to announce our winner of the trail camera yesterday, unfortunately, but we'll announce that person shortly. Another winner. Here's another camera. Still got a big box of them. Still got a big box of these Guard Pro trail cameras. They're not there's still a whole pile of chances for people to win one of those suckers. So that's cool. What else? Still working on we're gonna make that doctor in Vancouver a celebrity, maybe even some of his buddies. Who knows? We'll see, right? You'd believe how many nurses I've had contact me from the health industry here just in British Columbia, who I know and share truth with me. Although it could get them fired if spoken publicly. Some alarming shit going on in society today, as we all know, right? Now, fresh out of the frying pan, meaning the inbox. Listen to this. Haven't a clue what this is about. I never do. Things that make you go, It's the title of this email. Hi, Steve. I only use my first name simply because it's a small town and I don't want my 20-year-old daughter harassed. I got you. My name is Tammy. I'm a 62-year-old woman living in Clearfield, PA, who was raised to be a strong, independent, think for herself female. Right on. Love it. I've never given Bigfoot any thought either way, but for some reason about a month ago, one of your videos came across my recommended YouTube videos. And after watching your video, it dawned on me, maybe what happened to me March 2024 when I was out shed hunting may have something to do with Bigfoot. I spent a lot of time alone in the woods since I was about 12 years old, just to be there. I can't explain it. I just wanted to be in the woods. Since I lived in rattlesnake country and am petrified of snakes, before going into the woods, I always said out loud, don't let me see any snakes or anything that could harm me or will frighten me. I'm 62 now, and in all those years alone in the woods, I've never seen a snake. That's kind of weird. I also would say out loud, I'm not here to harm you. I only want to enjoy the beauty and the quiet stillness of your home. Why? I don't know. Anyway, March 2024, I headed out to the woods behind my apartment, which is on the outskirts of town, and woodland in front and back. And there's about an hour and a half left of daylight, so I thought, why not? I had my hunting knife on my hip, which I always take on my walks, and soon after entering the woods, I felt like somebody was following me. I've never felt that before. I kept turning around, looking, and not seeing anything, and continued looking for shed antlers. The terrain goes up really steep on one part, so I went down lower into the swampy area. From here, I could see the chain link fence separating the woods from the bypass highway, and one of the posts of the chain link fence was on one of the posts of that chain link fence was the head of a deer, and it wasn't clean cut. It was jagged, like it was ripped. All I could think was, who would do such a disrespectful and horrid thing to a deer? I continued my shed search and was only about 10 steps away from that deer head when I heard in my mind, a voice sternly say, leave. It didn't scare me. It irritated me, and I said out loud, I'm not bothering you. I'm just looking for shed deer antlers. At that point, the sky turned dark and the wind started to blow, so I said out loud, well, it's going to storm. I'm heading home. I walked about halfway back to my apartment, and the sun came back out, and the wind stopped. So once again, I started shed hunting. Damned if the wind didn't kick up and the skies turned black again. And I heard the voice again, this time a lot sterner. Leave now. And I said out loud, fine, I'm going. And it stayed stormy until I crossed the little creek behind my apartment. I didn't go in the woods anymore simply because whatever's back there can have it. There's plenty of woods around. I wasn't afraid, and the voice I heard seemed more protective than dangerous. Maybe it was my guardian angel, but what were they protecting me from? That's the big question, right? That's a real big question. Since this happened, I no longer go outside at night alone around my apartment, and I always loved the nighttime, but something has told me it's not safe at night. My 20-year-old daughter, who lives with me, has woke up hearing what she says is my voice calling her out back, but she knows it's not me. She knows I'm in bed sleeping. I've told her, don't respond and don't look out the window. She said she knows and she doesn't. I haven't told anybody before this simply because it just doesn't come up. I'm wondering what or who has the power to control the skies. Was it my guardian angel? Maybe. Thanks for the channel and for your kind and giving nature. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for you being kind and generous with your time. Tammy sharing what went down. And you know by now you're not alone, right? Now who or what... Oh. Whoops, had a bit of a dog blow up out there, all good. I didn't even know where I was at or what I was saying. I appreciate that email, Tammy, and I want to know what it is that's mimicking our family's voices in the woods and beckoning the kids, or anybody else for that matter, right? It's a strong pattern, you can't ignore it. Unless you really want to. All right, here we go. Next, Utah is chiming in again. This is titled Rocks Thrown at Us. Rocks Thrown at Us and Whooping Howls. Feel free to share any details of our experience. Also, I included a couple of pictures of trees less than half a mile from where I had my experience. What do you think of structures like these? I can't tell if this is natural or not, but I felt that it was out of place and too large of trees for people to manipulate. Alright, the pictures aren't in this. Hi Steve, recently found your channel after a personal experience my husband and I had last fall of 2019 on the Boulder Mountains in southern Utah. Previous to this experience, I'd never looked into Sasquatch and always thought it was probably a hoax. Unfortunately, we both changed our opinion on the existence after our experience. Excuse me. We drove up to the Boulder Mountains in Utah and went to the lower Barker Reservoir just before dark. We arrived at the parking lot that was completely empty, parked our car. I was excited to try out fly fishing for the first time and proceeded to take the short hike to the reservoir with my gear. When we got to the water, my husband began fishing on the dock while I worked my way to the opposite side of the small reservoir. While walking, I heard a loud whooping coming from the direction I was headed. Being familiar with this place, I remembered a trail from another reservoir connected to this reservoir from the backside I was headed towards. This made me think that it was crazy hikers making a bunch of noise and that they would come into view out of the dense forest surrounding the reservoir at any moment from that trail. Although it was strange to hear the whoops that repeated louder and louder for about a minute as it moved closer, I was so focused on trying to figure out the technical difficulties of fly fishing that I paid little attention to it for long. I attempted to fish for about 10 minutes, but it was getting dark quickly and I decided to make my way back to the dock and take a last few casts with my husband before we hiked back to the car. When I got to the dock, my husband asked what those crazy whoops were and if it was me making them since it sounded so close. I remembered suddenly that no one ever appeared and that we were the only people parked in the lot. When I told him it wasn't me, I just were like, that was weird. I went back to fishing without much thought on it further. It was that time of evening when you can barely make out your fly in the water, and we were making our last few casts when my dog suddenly took off running for the car down the hill. See, that would be the major red flag creepy part for me. Fortunately, I was able to catch up to him and got him to halt with my verbal commands. I scolded him for taking off, since that was unusual, and tied him to the dock. I thought since he was an Italian greyhound that maybe he was getting cold and wanted to go back since he was shaking badly. I went back to make my last couple casts on the left side of the dock. It was T-shaped, and I was on the left and my husband on the right, when suddenly I saw a large object at least as big as a softball come into my peripheral view from the tree line, and it hit with a huge splash about 4 feet from me. I suddenly felt very threatened, and I realized someone was in the woods watching me and I could not see them, and was unarmed. I immediately turned to my husband and he was like, "What the heck was that huge splash?" I told him, "Someone just threw a huge rock at me from the woods." And I was on the end of the dock, and there was maybe 4 to 5 feet of bank before the thick tree line, so someone must have thrown it from at least 30 to 40 feet away. A kid cannot do that, so I thought a man hiding in the woods did it. Whatever threw it was maybe 10 to 20 yards across the trail where we had to hike back through to get to the car, which also made me nervous. I had not heard anything in the woods, not a sound. And it was downwind from me, so maybe the breeze that was making it hard to cast in my face made it... It was downwind from me, so maybe the breeze in my face made it to where I could not hear something approaching from behind me. I was also directly opposite of where I heard the whoops across the reservoir. The hair on my head and my neck was standing on end as we quickly grabbed our dog and gear and rushed, in almost darkness, back up the trail of the car. We were still the only vehicle in the lot and saw no sign of other people when we got back. This intensified our feeling that something was very off about it. When we got home from our trip, I told my dad what happened, and he said, "You know what that was, don't you?" And he told me He had just watched something about these guys in the 70s who supposedly recorded Bigfoot sounds at their hunting camp in the Sierras. I looked up and listened to the audio with my husband, and the second the whoops played, we knew what happened. I got goosebumps now just recalling the sound. It was exactly what we heard. I also found out that it is common to have rocks thrown at you. The combination of the whoops, the giant rock thrown so far, and the density of the forest with no one around has confirmed for us what we encountered that evening. I did not see a Bigfoot, but I did need to know what these beings are. But I didn't need to know that these beings are real after that. And needless to say, I went and bought a 10mm pistol I carry anytime I'm out in the woods or near them now. My husband will hardly camp out there anymore. I refuse to let it keep me from going up there. But I'll never lose the feeling that I'm being watched. I've been in the woods my entire life and been an avid fisher and hunter, and I've never had anything happen or heard anything like this before. My husband and I tried to find reports for this area and couldn't find anything. I figured maybe if you talked about it on your channel, then maybe someone who has had an experience up there will also come forward. We can't have been the only ones. Thanks for sharing your story and the others in a safe place. I hope we can get to the bottom of this mystery. Warm regards, Lisa and Destry. All right, share it. Appreciate you coming forward, big time. Sorry I don't have the photos. They didn't save. They didn't save in my notes. Let's see. We've had who knows how many emails from Utah, right? So many. So many emails from Utah. That's this specific area. We'll see. Somebody's going to chime in the comment section or email me. For sure. For sure. Now, this next email is titled, My Encounter. Hey Steve, I hope you're doing well. My name is Logan, and I'm from a small town of Massey, Ontario. I live outside of the town, and my neighbors are roughly 1 kilometer apart. To give you an idea of the rural area I live in, it's mainly fields and bush all around. And on Saturday, December 5th, 2020, I had an encounter with one of these beings. Me and my dad were going out to our camp to check the minnow trap we have in a creek beside our camp, as we enjoy ice fishing and minnows make great bait. Anyways, we left our house and we drove by our neighbor's house, and they weren't home as there were no cars or anything in their driveway. And as I looked out the window, I seen what I thought was a person, probably 350 yards away, walking near the edge of the field, and I realized they were wearing completely black and were huge. To put in perspective, I'm 6'5", 250, and in no way a small guy. My dad's 5'10", 190. Not a small guy either. When we deer hunt together, he walks out to his, and I walk through the bush to my stand. And as I walk, I can see him. And from 350 yards, he looks absolutely tiny compared to how big this thing was from that distance. I estimate it was at least 10 feet tall and at least 3.5 foot shoulder to shoulder. I've been watching your channel for 2+ years and always been interested in this topic. I never thought I would see one of these beings. Anyways, I'll update you if I have any further encounters with one of these beings. And P.S., keep doing what you're doing, Steve. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're a good, hard-working, honest guy. Appreciate the kind words, my man, and keep us updated for sure. But more importantly, make sure you speak openly about it in your community, all right? Make sure you do that. Ask around. And see who else is harboring that truth inside between their ears, right? Help them cut that shit loose and let it free. Ontario. No shortage of shit going on in Ontario. This next email is titled, Weird Summer Evening in Gold Bar. Hi Steve, new subscriber here. I've been binge watching your videos and Sasquatch stories. Happened by the channel while searching grizzly videos for a couple weeks now. Very interesting and eye-opening accounts and perspective. I have a story of my own I'd like to share. It's not an eyes-on story, but after watching and hearing others' accounts, it's reason for me to rethink the conclusion or explanation others came up with for me. I have 5 acres of land on Skycomish River, just outside of Gold Bar, Washington, off Highway 2. And this summer, my girlfriend and I were sitting by the campfire next to the riverbed, just as dusk set in. We were watching the spawning salmon slapping the eddy across the river. We were sitting there enjoying the evening when we heard 2 large cracks, like tree breaks, across the river, followed by a couple of good thumps. We didn't pay too much attention, as an occasional tree fall isn't that uncommon. And about 15 minutes later, we heard a couple of heavy splashes that were distinctly different sounding than the fish jumping. Rocks. I've been a competitive fisherman and outdoorsman my whole life, and I know the difference between a fish jumping and a rock splash. The sounds were intermittent and directly across the river from my property. You'd hear fish and then a rock or two, and our gaze was now fixed on the spot. And suddenly, we saw a grapefruit-sized rock come out of the trees and hit where the fish were jumping. First thought was, who the hell would be over there throwing rocks at salmon before dark? And where are the rocks coming from? It would be nearly impossible to stand. That side of the river has no reasonable access either, and we can see a half a mile up and down the riverbed from our property. Wide open view. And as this continued, my curiosity got the better of me, so I walked out on the riverbed to see what was up. It's about 100 yards to the edge of the river across the riverbed from my property during the summer, and about 20 yards across the river where the rocks were flying. As soon as I got there, nothing. Everything ceased. I stood there for a good half hour, maybe 20 minutes, and nothing but an occasional salmon jumping. I turned around, walked back to the campfire, and my girlfriend and I were just like, wow, that was weird. And it wasn't much longer before the rocks picked up again. The rocks being thrown were not massive, but not baseball size either by any means. And as I stated before, where they were being thrown from, not lobbed, but thrown with velocity, would be next to no way. I have a 20-year-old son who's 6'8", was a multiple youth state wrestling champion and high school all-conference defensive end. And he could not pitch rocks of that size like that. No way. How do I know this? We throw rocks at the river all the time. After speaking with a couple of people around there, it was suggested that it was a tweaker over there doing what tweakers do. Sounds plausible, but I just kind of went with it, even though my instincts told me differently. The instincts always know everything. Of all the countless days and hours we've spent there over the last few years, we've only seen one questionable person on the riverbed, our side, acting like they might be high. To get to the other side and into where this incident occurred would be quite a superhuman feat, and to get back at dark, slim chance of survival. After watching many of your videos and stories, there were several things that jumped out at me. River/creek bed, salmon, dusk, tree breaks, rocks being thrown with velocity. I now know how easily things can be rationalized and explained away even when you know better. That sixth sense told me it wasn't a tweaker, and even though I rationalized that, I now know what it wasn't. It was not Captain Tweaker America. Lastly, earlier in the summer, on 2 separate occasions, I checked my trail cameras I have set up at the property for security. And I captured on 2 occasions a strange and very distinctive orb of light about the size of a softball. They could not have been lens flare, as the sun was behind the cameras at the time. Never thought too much about it until the accounts I see on your channel. Maybe nothing, maybe something. You also helped me realize why, with all the expeditions and technology, they can't seem to find these creatures at will. I think the difference is, when they're being looked for, they know it. This is why pretty much all encounters are accidental. Thanks for all the good work. Keep up the good fight. Feel free to use my name, John Potter. Appreciate that email, John. If you're still hanging out here, I'd like to see that trail camera photo of that ball of light for sure. And that's interesting to know that they can be caught on trail camera. Right? Very interesting. What do we got here? Ooh, looks like a long one. I'm going in. I'm going in. Dual encounters and a recent revelation. Hello, Steve. Allow me to preface this email with a couple of statements. First, allow me to express my empathy for you regarding your passing of your friend and your companion, Mr. Mac. Second, maybe ignorance really is bliss. Appreciate the kind words. That was a while ago. In July of '84, I was 25 years old. My brothers and I were continuing a family tradition of hosting a very informal party, traditionally held on the 3rd of July along the Tennessee River, upstream from Nickajack Dam. Just like it reads, Nickajack. In attendance were close family friends, we'd known them for years, as well as acquaintances from our years in high school athletics. The party attendees included women as well as men, including my girlfriend at the time, now my wife of the past 35 years. It was quite the eclectic group. Future teachers, social workers, attorneys, craftsmen, healthcare professionals, entrepreneurs, and a cop. Me. That area in the mid-'80s was very rural, with houses and cabins sparsely situated along the riverbanks. The riverbanks rose to the surrounding hillsides that were thickly forested with hardwoods. White-tailed deer thrived on the abundance of acorns produced each fall by the oak trees. The small game animals of southeast Tennessee populated the area as well. The historic suck of the Tennessee River was in this area. A river feature that posed a navigational hazard to early explorers and river travelers, now gone since the construction of the TVA dams. And since then, I've learned the area is also known for numerous sightings of large, hair-covered, human-resembling creatures, known locally as wood boogers, or simply boogers. They exhibit the same characteristics and behaviors of the Sasquatch, more commonly known as Bigfoot. Hollers, bottoms, and runs are often prefaced with the term booger throughout the region. Yeah, same as here. Not booger, but devil, skookum, all sorts of shit up here named. All of this was unknown to me at the time. All of this was unknown to me at the time frame I described. In grade school, I watched The Legend of Boggy Creek at the movies and stared wide-eyed at the Patterson-Gimlin film. I read paperbacks secreted in the front of my desk while the teacher secreted in the front of my desk while the teacher droned on about diagramming sentences. Many of the stories are about cryptic creatures or paranormal experiences, just the kind of thing to distract the wandering mind of an adolescent. And all that was put aside when my high school, then college coursework demanded more strict attention. Boogers and Bigfoot were regulated to the back of my mind during those years. During the party, we constructed the requisite bonfire, ate hot dogs and chips, and drank beer. We reveled into the night, shooting fireworks over the river or at each other, and laughed, lied, and carried on as only persons of that age seemed to be able to do. And side note, decades later, while watching Finding Bigfoot for the comic relief it provided, I heard the, quote, top investigators, end quote, of the BFRO, Bumbling Fools of Ridiculousness organization, comment to the effect, it's a well-documented fact, mandatory qualifier preceding the description of pretty much only behavior attributed to the creatures, Sasquatch are attracted to parties with flashing lights, music, even fireworks, end quote. Gradually, and well after midnight, we laid down in our sleeping bags and drifted off to sleep. And as I know you've experienced, sunrise comes early in July, first light comes ridiculously early, and I woke suddenly during that period when there's enough light to see, but not enough to see distinctly. I felt lightly falling rain on my face and assumed that was responsible for waking me so suddenly. I was scanning the area, moving my eyes only, as to not disturb my girlfriend, laying with her back against my chest. I was just becoming cognizant of the fact that there were no birds chirping or singing, typical when dawn begins the early activities. From above and behind me, beyond my field of view, a yell, a roar, or a combination of the two struck me with such a volume, I felt as though the skin on the side of my head and face was vibrating. The concert speaker effect, so often described during recounts of audio encounters, not only was the volume incredible, but the duration was equally phenomenal. Several other peculiarities were obvious during the incident. Why wasn't anyone else moving, running, or otherwise reacting to the sound? Why wasn't I reacting to the sound? My normal reaction would have been to jump or roll into a reactive position and prepare to defend myself, actively or passively. For a reason I still can't comprehend to this day, I didn't move. It's a pattern. I don't get it. I kind of get it. I didn't feel extreme fear or danger, just I couldn't move. It was as though my instinctive reactions had been overridden or otherwise dismissed from my mind. I remember listening to the sound of the footsteps walking away on the old double-track skid road on the rise above our flat party spot. Very heavy. I remember thinking, some grossly fat, pissed-off hillbilly wearing clodhoppers trying to prank us for our late-night antics. I convinced myself there was no harm, no foul, and without even attempting to investigate. What? Future cop. Remember? I just went back to sleep. How does that happen so often? I don't get it. Later, as the sun was rising, we all began to wake up, and I sat up with the vivid memory of what occurred earlier was still fresh in my mind. I looked at the piece of plastic beneath my sleeping bag, and it was speckled with raindrops. I hadn't been dreaming. I began looking at everyone else, then said, Who yelled at us this morning? And most people ignored me. Others said I didn't hear any yelling. And I asked my girlfriend, and she claimed she hadn't heard anything either. Later, when driving home with my brothers, I pushed them on whether or not they heard anything. Both of them said, no, nothing. And I never spoke of the incident again for 34 years. I told myself it had been some sort of a dream. I even researched the phenomena of sleep paralysis years later when I learned of it. Didn't explain it. And a little over a year later, I married my girlfriend and realized my dream of moving to and living in Wyoming. I'd fished all my life to that point. I even fished for trout well in high school, in extremely close proximity to where Scott Carpenter conducted his research. I started hunting in earnest while in college, and I couldn't wait to start pursuing elk, deer, and antelope in Wyoming. In October of '87, after suffering a purgatory for a year to establish residency, my best friend and I received an insider tip regarding the location of an elk herd containing several spikes and branch antlered bulls. We drove into Sunlight Basin into the dark, located our spot, and started to gear up. And at first light, we spotted the elk, reasonably close to where they were supposed to be, and unfortunately, they were moving straight away from us. We quickly formulated a foolproof plan and divided up to go shoot bulls. My assigned route took me up and along the north side of the small valley the elk were using. It started up gradually enough, then took a sharp turn upward, leading to a hog-back ridge running north/south. The belief was I could glass from the ridge and determine a route that would bring me within range of the elk. My hike started easily enough. My steps were light with excitement and anticipation. And to date, this seemed my best opportunity to actually get an elk. So I moved quickly through the small trees and scrub brush, all the while being scolded by the mountain squirrels and chipmunks. The chickadees, the stellar jays chirped and called in symphony with the squirrels. The terrain quickly changed to pines and firs, sparse brush, and a thick carpet of pine needles. I was marveling at how quietly I was moving through the trees on the needles when it occurred to me it was really quiet. No birds, no squirrels, only the sound of my breathing as I ascended the hill. The atmosphere changed too. I had moved out of the light of the rising sun and into the shade cast by the ridge, compounded by the canopy. Gloomy and foreboding, My mood changed as well. My awareness ramped up and my head swiveled side to side, and to me, a newcomer to Wyoming, the situation left me with just one conclusion. A grizzly was in the area. There had been documented attacks in the area, both recently and historically. Having to deal with not being the apex predator in the woods was new to me. Everyone I knew who hunted or spent considerable time in the mountains warned me of and schooled me about sharing the area with a big, dangerous, unpredictable, and increasingly common animal. And I was carrying my dad's custom 30-06, loaded with 180 grain partitions. Adequate for elk, but for grizzly defense, I wish I had 220 grain rounds. I wished I had 220 grain round nose solids in the magazine. My steps slowed to a crawl as I constantly scanned everything, smelled everything, and wondered why I continued to hear nothing. I found myself in a small half circle, maybe 150 yards in diameter, formed by the west side of the ridge and the south side of the peak of the mountain to my left. It was a strange area geographically. The slope of the half bowl gave me limited vision ahead and to my left, while the lip of the bowl prevented me from seeing downslope to my right. And my hair stood on end, and I remember actually feeling the back of my neck begin to stiffen. I believed a charge was imminent, but I had no indication as to which direction it might come from. My rifle, suffering from years of hard use in the hands of relatives, had a defective safety that prevented me from chambering around until I was prepared to shoot. My low-income job forced me to choose between repairs, not hunting, or submitting to the conditions. My choice is obvious. For a reason seeming prudent at the time, I slowly backed up against the trunk of an old pine tree, old-growth pine, probably in too precarious of a position to be worth cutting during previous logging activities. I gained a bit of security by limiting my concentration to about 270 degrees of vision. I guess my rationale at the time was, well, if it comes from directly behind me, at least I've got this big-ass tree between it and me. When the apprehension became intolerable, I reached down and quickly worked the bolt. The reassuring clinking of the brass cartridge as it tracked into the chamber ahead of the bolt was very reassuring. No doubt. That sound, and what happened next, are indelibly burned into my memory. When the bolt reached the chamber and I slammed the bolt handle down, there occurred what I can only describe as an explosion of noise to my left. I heard some dirt and small pebbles falling down to the edge of the pine needle carpet. I have no recollection as to how my rifle came from the port arms position to my right shoulder, or how I instinctively looked over rather than through the scope. Something had been standing or crouching within 40 yards of me, just barely above my line of sight, and it was big. I was still in grizzly mindset, and I remember thinking, I wonder why it ran off instead of attacking me. And all this took place within the time frame of a few seconds, and I recall being struck by several thoughts that included, it's big. I can feel the vibrations of its first steps, and hear that deep thud of feet striking the hard, thin layer of soil covering the solid rock. The steepness of the peak precluding the growth of any vegetation beyond that. I could hear the sounds of it running away for a long time. Slowly the realization of the fact whatever ran away did so on 2 feet overcame me. When I could no longer hear it, I made my way to where I believed it had been, and a short search revealed a line of scuffs on the hard scrabble above the needle carpet, leading almost straight up the peak. My amazement quickly gave way to the need to reach a safer place. I crossed the hog back and into the sunlight of the eastern side. I immediately became more calm as the forest sounds returned. I followed a game trail to the bottom of the narrow meadow, then west back to my friend's truck, parked about a half a mile from where we originally split up. Used the hood of the truck to steady my arms. I studied the area of the incident through my binoculars for the 40 minutes or so before my friends came back. I looked into every crevice in the rock, into every shadow, but saw nothing. And feeling frustrated, I quit looking. When they returned, they told me that they hadn't seen the elk and asked me what I saw. I thought for a moment, and then I said, "Nothing. I heard something run off, but I never saw it." They agreed between themselves it was an elk, possibly a sheep. I couldn't get my head around either of those possibilities. It being one of those creatures never occurred to me. After all, they were confined to regions west of my location, Washington, Oregon, California for sure. Roger Patterson proved that, maybe Idaho. And I first watched and listened to you in your video regarding wolves and the need to control them. Quote, "Who are the real killers?" End quote. Yeah, that was me. That one got a lot of attention. Later, I followed the links and witnessed your entry into the convoluted world of these beings and the people who have encountered them. A few videos into the series, I began reconsidering my Wyoming experience. I didn't even consider what happened in Tennessee as being relevant. And after all, how could I have heard something like that while people literally within my arm's reach hadn't? Then came your recount to what happened between you and your hunter in October, and it made me think. Anyway. Next came the email from Tom D. and your response on December 12th. Now, after listening to encounters of all the people who have recounted their experiences, including you, it becomes the most plausible explanation of what I witnessed in the pre-dawn hours of the 4th of July in 1984, and again at the base of that peak in Wyoming in 87. It doesn't cause me fear, but it is unnerving to grasp the possibility of being in such close proximity to one of those creatures on one occasion, let alone two. That, and I still grapple with their apparent ability to project sound to one person. Then there's the incredible strength and phenomenal agility exhibited in rushing up that near vertical peak, and most of the way on solid rock. I was in my prime. It would have taken me nearly an hour to scale that peak. In closing, anyone who criticizes you for being armed while in grizzly country is either a fool, inexperienced, or a dangerous combination of both. Further, as law enforcement officer tasked with conducting investigations, one of my first considerations was Occam's razor. Occam's razor. A-H-K-E-M-S. Occam's razor. And you're intelligent, so I'm guessing you're probably familiar with it in one form or another. It simply states, quote, "The most simple or obvious answer is most often the correct answer. Is it ever?" Meaning, based upon the observations of all of the witnesses over all of the years, the answer with the highest probability of being correct is various regions of North America are populated with large, hairy bipedal humanoids with probable capabilities beyond our immediate understanding, period. Double period. Thanks, Steve. Merry Christmas to both you and Sarah. If you get this before that date, withhold my name, please. I don't give a rat's ass about what some fool might say about me, but my wife holds a professional position at a government facility. You know how nutty and flaky those fruits can be. Sounds like a box of granola, only dumber. Okay, man, I gotta go back to the beginning. Did I share your name in the beginning? Okay, we're good. No name shared. And thank you for that email and a little slice of common sense noted for everyone to hear. Welcome to the club. Right? Welcome to the club. All right. How many? Whoa, this one's a frickin' book. It's too late to crack open a book-size email. Save that for later. We got this one. Borderline. I'm going in. I'm going in, then somebody's going to get told they want a trail camera. This is titled Charged by a Sasquatch. Ooh. Hi, Steve. My name is Al, and I've resided 63 years in Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and the Pacific Northwest. hunting, fishing, and guiding. To begin with, thank you, and Scott, for the time you spend helping people with the subject of Sasquatch and getting true information out to the general public. My first experience with Sasquatch began in the Kalmiopsis Wilderness in 1979. We were invited into 3 mining claims that were 12 miles into the wilderness behind locked gates. Upon getting to the mines, which were 12 miles of 4x4 low range for the entirety of the trip, we came to a beautiful setting of a cabin in the old growth timber above a stream that ran into the ocean about 3 miles to our west. Upon packing our gear into the cabin, I noticed a musky smell to the area that I didn't recognize as anything or any animal I've smelled before, and it was extremely quiet. Animals, birds, bugs, frogs, etc. visible or making any noise. My wife noticed the outdoor privy about 100 yards from the cabin and stated that I was going to accompany her on any night excursions to the privy, which I did without incident, I might add. And I'd asked the mine caretaker if there were fish in the stream below the cabin, and he guaranteed me it was good fishing. So, at daylight the first morning, I gathered up my fly pole and equipment, and along with my Australian Kelpie dog, headed down to the stream. When I reached the stream, it was at a long run of shallow rapids, so I made my way upstream to the gravel bar and pool that I could just make out, maybe a quarter of a mile upstream. And upon reaching the tail of the pool, I crossed the stream and stayed about 20 feet from the pool so as not to cast a shadow on the pool and spook any fish. The gravel bar was approximately 100 yards long and maybe a small clearing next to the stream. I started stripping out some line and maybe 2 dry air casts that was going to drop the fly into the water on the 3rd cast when all hell broke loose. There's a sharp ridge that came in from my right at the head of the pool that ran at a steep pitch up through the old growth timber to the ridge line about 400 yards above me. At the top of the ridge there was a hellish crash and a boom of something hitting a large tree. And as I looked up, I could see a giant, upright, bipedal, hairy thing coming down the ridge at a high rate of speed that crashed into, shook, and threw branches from these big 2 to 3 foot diameter trees. As close as I can describe what I was seeing, in comparison, would be watching a commercial brush thinner thrashing trees as this thing ran down the ridge toward me. It hit and abused about 4 big trees before coming to a stop about 100 yards above me, about 20 yards above the stream, at the head of the pool. Then it came to a dead quiet stop and stood absolutely still. I could just make out the enormous height and bulk standing in the deep shadows. Ooh. At this time, my dog ran past me toward this thing was standing, and I'd moved slightly upstream while quickly retrieving my fly line, closing the distance about 35 yards, trying to see what the hell this thing was. My dog, whom I might add, would take on bear or bull, bovine, with no fear, stopped, looking towards the point, with his nose in the air, then turned and ran past me at a high rate of speed downstream in the direction in which we had came. Why do they know? Please, some dog talk to me for 5 minutes in English. That's all I need. He had previously never ran away from anything. And at this moment, I briefly thought of my .22 pistol on my hip and quickly dismissed that thought. I looked towards the tail of my dog disappearing downstream and decided to follow him at a high rate of speed back to the cabin. Upon reaching the cabin, sometime after my dog, who had beat me there, I saw him standing next to my wife, who was anxiously looking down in my direction. The dog was looking as well, waiting to see where I was, as my dog had never abandoned me before. I popped over the bank and said, "Back up, we're leaving." I briefly told her what I had seen and what had happened, and on our drive out she said she hadn't felt comfortable since we had first arrived at the cabin. And since that first experience, we have had several other experiences. I can only describe what we see and have seen as looking very Patty Patterson in description. One time we saw one while traveling up the Olympic Peninsula that was directly at the roadside, no more than 25 yards away, up on a 12-foot embankment, which made it appear 20 feet tall. They are most definitely human, not animal in appearance. You guys hear that one? One more time, as usual. They are most definitely human, not animal in appearance. Huge in height and width, very muscular, covered with dark brown to black medium length coarse hair, with the exception of the frontal face and palms of the hands. And since my first experience, I've traded in my .22 for a much larger caliber, and always packing iron when entering the woods. Much like you, I'm always armed and still going to the woods pre-dawn hunting. Before entering the woods, I always mentally say, I'm peaceful unless you screw with me. Then I'm lethal. I mean no harm. I don't want any of your shit. I just want a few mushrooms, berries, and maybe some meat. Y'all just leave me the F alone. So far, we're good. Feel free to share my name. I hope everyone continues to use our forests and enjoys the freedoms within them. Regards, Al. Still hunting and fishing in the Pacific Northwest. Right on, man. I love hearing that part, especially. It sounds like you people are very familiar. You people, you and your wife are very familiar with these people. And if you ever feel like sharing some more truth, we're here. We're here ready to hear it. All right? Absolutely appreciate you taking that time and doing that for us here. And there you go, you guys. I wonder how many at this stage of the game that are following this channel or following any other channels, truth channels, absolute truth. I wonder how many of you have accepted the fact, possibly, that these are human-like beings. Human-like. Very human-like beings. Or how many of you still are adamant that they're just an unclassified gorilla? North America's great ape, right? North America's great ape. Not, never was, never will be. If that's anything I will say out loud with confidence, I'm saying that for sure. Now, let's see who won the trail camera, shall we? All right, so, what is this, our third? I think it's our third trail camera to be won. 3 Fridays now. Our third trail camera winner, recipient of our brand new Guard Pro trail camera with a solar panel to go with it is, I don't have a drum roll sound, but there's a drum roll we'll be playing right now. And the winner is a very kind lady who has been a member of this channel, generously turning her few dollars a month into full tummies of hungry kids. And her name is Rebecca Beelser. 29 is your handle on the YouTube channel. Rebecca Beelser. I hope I didn't trash your last name, Rebecca. But anyway, super stoked that you won. You won. You might not be into these cameras. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I don't know. I'm sure you know somebody who might be into these game cameras. Either way, you won. And that's a big thank you from those fed children, all right? Thank you so much for contributing. And what you need to do now is email me at whatever. Everybody emails me all over the place, so you can either email me at proguide66, the number 66, at howtohunt.com, or email me at sharemystory@howtohunt.com, all right? And I want you to include in your email your mailing address and your original photo for your profile picture on the YouTube channel, right? And I hope that made you happy. Congratulations, you won. Yeah, so get that emailed to me ASAP with your mailing address and we'll ship it to you. and how we've been, all the other ones are all probably in the mail still right now. Hopefully the border doesn't stop them, but I don't imagine they would. And what we have done is sent them as a personal gift from me. All right? And I think we just write down it's worth $50 or something on the package and say it's a gift, trail camera, off it goes. And that way, our greasy, sticky-fingered, corrupt governments won't try to steal money from our pockets thinking they deserve something out of that, which they don't. All right? There we go. Now what else? I think that's about it. Funny, yesterday, or the day before, Sarah and I were both sitting there playing with that AI shit and making pictures of our friends and sent them. And then we decided to actually, we tried to see if the AI would make up a decent photo of her t-shirts and hats and caps and everything on somebody as a model. And it actually worked out pretty good. We put that on her How to Hunt store, the howtohuntstore.com. You can check that out. And then I used it as well. I said, make me a picture of a guy putting this Guard Pro trail camera on a tree. And then they came up with a picture and they automatically put the How to Hunt toque on them too. And I posted that up. And all of a sudden some people got angry. Oh my God, Steve, don't use AI. Whatever. Made some pictures. No harm done. Share my story at howtohunt.com. All right, you guys? You got some truth that you need exposed to the planet, word for word. Get it to me and I'll do it. And I'm working on a handful of things to make some knowledge well known, and as well make some dark sons of bitches celebrities coming up quick too. All right? Will it get me in trouble? I don't get me in trouble. They're getting themselves in trouble for being dark, right? I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what everybody should be doing, and not tolerating dishonest parasites in our communities. All right? And stand up, do something, say something, and don't allow them to hide. Right? Will I get in trouble from the bad guys? Oh, eventually, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. I don't give a shit. I'd rather be dead or locked up than help bad people hide. I'm not about that shit. So, anyway, there you go, you guys. Now I gotta go out and sweat it up and continue fencing in the sunshine today. And oh yeah, I blew it yesterday. I was supposed to phone the guy who video recorded those 5 beings, I think it was 5, out in that creek in the meadow in the winter. And I texted him last night, told him I was going to phone him later on today, so that's going down. I'm going to phone him. I don't know if he's going to let me record our conversation or not, but if he does, I know he wants to remain anonymous, and that's easy. But if he does want to share the conversation we're going to have about him recording those beings in that meadow along the creek, that'll be pretty cool. And if he doesn't, that's cool too. At least I'm going to get a bunch of answers from him of curious questions we all would have about that video. Like, what was he doing? Could he tell with his own eyes if they were looking at him or what they were all moving away from? Where did they go? Did he take off before leaving sight of them, or did they move off out of sight of him? You know what I mean? And if he's got any other previous knowledge of those people right around there, it should be a good I can't wait to have that conversation, right? And I will report the outcome to you guys tomorrow, or even share the conversation. We'll see how it goes. There you go. But before I do that, I have to go get work done. So have a great weekend. Make sure you do what you love to do, all right? No matter what, or else you're the living dead. All right? Back tomorrow.